Welcome to another Chef Knives to Go Quick Look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we have is the Yahiko Shidogami or White number 2 hammered Gyuto 210mm knife. So this knife line has a 3-layer construction on either side of that harder core steel, which is Shidogami white paper number 2 reactive high carbon steel. Heat treats around 62, 63 Rockwell on that core steel. You've got soft stainless cladding on either side of that. The stainless cladding has two main characteristics. It's got a hammered with large hammer mark finish on it for some texture and good food release, and definitely a lot of blacksmith authenticity and handiwork there. So it lends a pretty cool aesthetic to this setup here. And also it has a kudo-uchi or blacksmith finish, sometimes known as a KU finish, a black protective finish, which you can see when they start grinding the knife to thin it out towards the edge on this blade road. You can see, of course, that gives way to the actual cladding steel itself, and then the core peeks out from the cladding at the very edge. So neat look. These will vary a little bit from knife to knife as far as dimensions and weights. So this particular one is 171 grams, or about 6 ounces, right on the money. Edge length, they tend to be a little oversized. This one's 217 on the edge, so that's from the tip down to the back of the chin, known as the heel. The overall length is, so that's about 8.5 inches. Overall length about 14 inches, or 360 millimeters. Spine thickness, it's fairly thick coming out of the handle, but it thins down pretty quick. So it's about 3.5 millimeters here above the chin. And then about halfway down I measured it about 2.1, so it thins out. And then pretty much just holds that all the way. There's not really much distal taper here. The tip thins out with the grind. So it stays thick pretty well all the way till you hit that grind. These don't have a real high grind. So while the very, very tip is pretty thin, it kind of flares out a little more quickly. So it's not going to like ghost through stuff, but the tip does work pretty well. The height on these tends to be kind of generous, so this is 50.5 millimeters on this particular one. The handles are not super big and the neck's fairly narrow, so you got loads and loads and loads of finger clearance here between you and the cutting board. No problem there for almost any hand size. The handle is a basic octagonal oak, excuse me, brain fart there. Oak with a buffalo horn ferrule. This particular one has a crack in the ferrule. Sometimes you can have that happen where this has a thicker tang and putting it in, it cracks that. Sometimes not until maybe they ship it. So I'm sure Mark will either replace this handle or put it on discount. But anyway, so I'll mark this one with cracked ferrule so he knows it has that. The handle's fairly slim at 68 millimeters where the wood meets the buffalo horn. So definitely gives it a slim feel. It's also pretty light, being smaller. So there's your balance point. So that balance point tends to be in front of at least my pinch grip, which is a little bit back here. What that does is gives you a weight forward kind of balance point, and gives you a little bit more kind of feel to the mass of the knife, so a little more cutting power, even though it's only 6 ounces. The edge tends to be really sharp on these out of the box. I'll say 6, maybe 7 out of 10. They're pretty stiff blades. All 4 samples I've got, different knife models in this line, have been very straight, which is really good to see. They're quite thin at the edge. You'll see that the edge grind isn't real tall. It doesn't go up the knife very far, so you'll tend to have a pretty quick change between that thin metal at the edge and then as it flares out towards these shoulders here to hit the hammered part of the sides of the blade. So what that does is it'll give you great food separation, give you nice product release. It might wedge a little bit in harder ingredients. It's just kind of the nature of the compromise of a design, but just to be aware of that. So let's take a close-up look at these. They're nice looking knives. So there's our beauty shot. So these have hand chiseled kanji on the right side of the blade, as you would be holding it, using it. You've got your dimples on there, your hammered dimples, so nice aesthetic effect. You've got a kind of a kasumi or frosted finish, and then you can see the core steel peeking out there underneath the cladding at the very edge. The construction of these does not take that stainless cladding over the top of the spine, so you'll see the layers of the construction in the spine, and that does mean that the core steel is exposed there, so you got to make sure you keep that dry as well because it is reactive. Let's look at the cutting board geometry of this guy, and you'll see this one has a fairly low tip on it. This has a nice flat spot towards the heel, and it's pretty long. It'll slide into a flat spot at least the back 40% maybe. So, and it flows into that pretty nice. You definitely have a stop there, but it's not too abrupt. And every knife's going to be slightly different on the profile, but this one goes in a pretty darn nice flat section, a fairly low tip. So I'm digging the tip in right in there. So this isn't going to rock real high. If you sharpen and you want to take that front, couple millimeters and maybe bring it up a little bit with your sharpening routine, you can maybe get a little bit higher on here before the tip starts digging in. You can customize that. But nice profile, nice and smooth. So these are well-crafted knives. They can be a little bit rustic, especially in the back, but they have filed off on both sides in the choil and the neck, so that's comfortable. The spine's got a little bit of relief to it, so got a little bit of that combination of some rustic character, a lot of blacksmith character, but some nice grinds and very straight blades at the same time, so nice combination. So this is the Yahiko Shitogami or white number 2 hammered Gyuto 210mm knife.